Product managers are one of the most sought after jobs at just about any company, especially for newly minted MBA graduates. Now in this video, I'll explain why that is, and then pulling from my years of experience as a product manager at a large tech company, I'll explain to you exactly what it is they do. So stay tuned. Hey folks, Richard Walls here, and if it's your first time on the channel, welcome. What this channel is all about is helping you with your professional brand, career development, and personal finance. Now, if you're into that sort of thing, which I assume you are, you'll want to make sure to hit the subscribe button down below as well as the notification bell so you get notified when I post new content. Now, product management, what is it and why is it such a popular role? And the answer is, it depends. Depends on the size of the company and the type of product you would be managing. Now, I'll touch on those differences a little later, but fundamentally, a product manager is responsible for the financial success of a product or a product line. It's really what it boils down to. You're measured on the financial success of a product, and really whatever it takes to make that product successful, that's what you do. As you might imagine, there's a lot that goes into the success of a product, but ordinarily a product manager is heavily focused on the business end to end. And so that means business functions like sales, marketing, supply chain, pricing, customer in some cases. And depending on the size of the company, there may be teams focused on all those functions. So it's not necessarily you executing and doing all those things, but what you're doing is influencing them and you're working together with all those teams. You're giving them feedback and they're giving you input, and you're taking all those inputs and you're coming up with a strategy for the product. One analogy I like to make is product managers are like quarterbacks if you're into American football. If you're not into football, well, please humor me for just a minute because I really like sports analogies. As a quarterback, you make the plays happen and you work with your team to execute, and your team of course is made up of a lot of different roles. Now, you're not personally executing all those roles. You're not the one catching passes or running with the ball or blocking, but you do influence what happens with all those roles, and you have to be familiar enough with everyone's role to be the most effective play caller you can be. So as a product manager, you need to be familiar enough with marketing, sales, supply chain, pricing, again, all those functions to effectively launch a product, sustain it, make it successful, and carry it to the end of its life cycle. Now, all of what I just described is what a product manager is at its core, but like I mentioned earlier, there are a few differences depending on company size and types of product you would be managing. So as a product manager, you need to be familiar enough with marketing, sales, supply chain, pricing, and all those functions to effectively launch a product, sustain it, make it successful, and carry it to the end of its life cycle. Now, all of what I just described is what a product manager is at its core, but like I mentioned earlier, there are a few differences depending on company size and types of product you would be managing. At small companies, you are likely going to be wearing a lot of different hats, and you may be more involved, if not doing certain business functions outright. So you may be the one designing the product yourself. You may be the one executing the pricing strategy. You may be the one entirely engaged with the customer. There's no intermediary. You're doing a lot of this stuff on your own. So at a small company, you may be called upon to do that. At a large company, on the other hand, you're not wearing as many hats. You're really wearing the hat of a business manager in this case for the product, and you are the connection point between all these different functions. Again, like I mentioned earlier, collecting feedback, and then giving them input, and then executing or developing the strategy, and then executing the strategy for the product. Now, when it comes to products that you manage, and really this is from the perspective of technology, you would have either hardware or software. And I say technology, it doesn't have to be technology, it can be apparel, it can be any physical product. So there's product managers at Home Depot, for example. There's product managers at Nike and Adidas. You name it, there's a product manager for it. But when it comes to any physical product, one thing you have to keep in mind, one business function that's fairly core to this is supply chain. You don't have to worry about that in software, but supply chain is a big part of the success of any product, any physical product. So that's something you have to focus on, you have to be acutely aware of, and working with that business function to make a product successful. Now, another element to consider for physical products is the design cycle and the life cycle of these products. The design cycles are longer for physical products, and the life cycles are finite in many cases. There's an obsolescence that happens, and then you introduce a new product. Now, software, on the other hand, you don't really have to worry about supply chain, which is very nice. You don't have to worry about sourcing components and parts from different suppliers, where it's manufactured, how to get the product from point A to point B. You don't really have to worry about any of that. Now, what I mentioned towards the end of the segment on physical products is design cycle. Now, I mentioned physical products can take longer to design, and generally that's true in a certain way. Now, with software, you can take a long time to develop a product, but the design cycle is different because you can work with the customer, or you are working with the customer, you're working with the developer, and any changes that you want to make, you can make and simply send out an update over the air. You can't really do that with hardware, aside from the software in the hardware, but with software, you can make those updates and send it out. You don't have to create a brand new product from scratch. You don't have to build anything. The caveat to that is, of course, if you're designing a new product and launching a new product, that of course has to be built from scratch. But again, the idea here with software is that it's an iterative planning and execution process. At the end of the day though, whether it's a large company or a small company, physical products or software, you're called upon to be the expert of the product and the expert of the business of the product. And you have the biggest stake in whether or not the product is successful. Now, why is this role so sought after, especially for recent MBA graduates? Well, if my description hasn't really implied it yet, if you haven't noticed, everything I described is exactly what you learn in an MBA program. You apply virtually everything you learn in the program except for maybe accounting. But you learn quite a bit, and you are involved in all those functions to one degree or another. Now, for non-MBAs or just about anyone else, it's appealing for a similar reason. You get to own a product and you own a number, and it's up to you to make that product successful. And on top of that, you get a lot of practical business experience. You get exposure to a lot of different business functions. So again, you're learning a lot, and that in turn can make you do your job more effectively, and it can position you for other jobs in the future, and you become a good fit for it. And to top it off, these jobs tend to be very well paying, and that's because companies want to attract top talent that requires good business sense and effective communication between functional groups in order to make a product line successful. That's product management in a nutshell. Folks, if you have questions about the role, please do feel free to leave comments down below. And if you've been a product manager at some point in your career, I'd love to hear your experience as well. Now, if you like this video, of course, hit the like button down below. And then if you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to the right of that so that you get notified when I post new videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.